3,000 years. That's how long it's been since the Galactic Council descended upon Earth, extinguishing the light of humanity. Their reign was swift, their destruction unimaginable. Earth, once a thriving cradle of civilization, was reduced to nothing more than a barren wasteland, forgotten by the stars. For centuries, humanity's story seemed to end in silence, a forgotten chapter in the history of the universe. But no one told Earth that, in the depths of that silence, humanity's legacy didn't die. It festered. It grew. The survivors, hidden away in the shadows of the galaxy, waited. And now the time had come. The time for vengeance had arrived. The first signal came in the form of an ancient beacon buried deep beneath the ruins of what was once the cradle of civilization. A forgotten relic of Earth's forgotten power, hidden away by those who had known the truth long before the Council's invasion. When it activated, a chain of events began that no one could have foreseen. A flicker in the stars, a whisper in the void. It was a message. Humanity was still out there. The Galactic Council had long believed that humanity's extinction was inevitable, that their destructive force had wiped out Earth for good. But they were wrong. Those who survived the devastation had spent centuries gathering strength, rebuilding, learning, adapting, and waiting. They were not the same humans who once lived on Earth. The ashes of their world had forged them into something far more dangerous, far more determined. Now, with the galaxy's most powerful empires believing humanity to be extinct, the survivors were ready to strike back. And when they did, the stars would tremble. It started with whispers, barely detectable across the vastness of space. The first scouts returned, their reports filled with nothing but vague threats and cryptic messages. Humanity lives. The Galactic Council dismissed these reports, believing them to be nothing more than delusions. But then they saw it, an entire fleet emerging from the darkness of space. Ships crafted from the very technologies humanity had once developed, augmented by centuries of exile and study. These were not the desperate remnants of a long-dead civilization. These were warriors, born from the ashes, with one singular purpose: revenge. As Earth's new fleet pushed forward, breaking through the Council's defenses with ruthless precision, the galaxy began to notice. From the towering, sleek ships of the Council's ruling elite to the merciless war machines of the alien alliances, all who had once wiped Earth from their memory were suddenly faced with the undeniable truth: humanity had returned. But even in the midst of this unfolding war, there was something more ominous. Humanity's forces weren't just targeting the Galactic Council, they were targeting something much deeper. Something buried in the heart of the universe's oldest secrets. Their vengeance wasn't just for Earth. It was for the truth. Deep in the darkness of space, an ancient artifact, long thought lost, had been uncovered. The Council had hidden it for centuries, believing its power too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands. But they had underestimated humanity. The survivors knew that this artifact was the key to understanding their true origins and the true cost of their destruction. It was the key to unlocking a power so ancient, so terrifying, that it could rewrite the galaxy's history. It was the last vestige of Earth's true potential. For 3,000 years, humanity had been shattered and scattered across the stars. But now, they were coming together. Their enemies had no idea what was coming. As Earth's vengeance raged through the stars, the survivors found themselves face to face with a truth they had long ignored. To reclaim their rightful place in the universe, they would need more than just weapons. They would need to confront the very forces that had shaped their fate, the Council itself. The ancient beings who had plotted against them, and the dark secrets buried beneath their ashes. As the fleet of Earth's descendants moved ever closer to the heart of the Galactic Council, a final confrontation loomed on the horizon. With each battle, with each victory, the survivors of Earth grew stronger, their resolve unshakable. They were no longer just fighting for vengeance. They were fighting to uncover the truth of their past, to reclaim their future, and to make sure the galaxy would never forget the name of Earth again. But with every victory, the Council's response grew more desperate. They knew that this wasn't just a rebellion. This was something far bigger. This was the beginning of humanity's true reckoning. The survivors were not only reclaiming what was taken from them, they were reshaping the very nature of power in the galaxy. And no one, no empire, no alliance, no force in the universe was prepared for what humanity had become. As the final battle neared, a chilling truth emerged. The Galactic Council, in their arrogance, had believed they had controlled the galaxy. But they hadn't accounted for one thing. The humans who had risen from the ashes were no longer the same. They had adapted, evolved, and now they would rise up to claim their place among the stars. And when the final shot rang out, when the dust settled and the stars bore witness, the galaxy would never forget that humanity, the very species once thought erased, had returned. They had come back from the ashes, stronger than ever, and they were ready to take their vengeance. The question wasn't whether the Council could stop them, it was whether anyone in the galaxy could. The war was just beginning. The galaxy would soon learn what it truly meant to face the wrath of humanity. For centuries, the remnants of Earth had lived in the shadows, spread across the stars, never knowing if they were truly the last of their kind. They had survived the Council's brutal onslaught, but not without cost. Their people had fractured, scattered into the far reaches of the galaxy, hiding from the enemies who had thought themselves victorious. But now, as the signal from Earth's hidden beacon spread through the void, their scattered forces were slowly coming together, drawn by a common purpose: vengeance. The survivors were not the same people who had once walked the earth. The harsh conditions of exile, the need for survival, and the passage of time had shaped them into something far more resourceful and resilient. The fleet that was now emerging was a mix of cultures, all bound together by a single, unyielding truth: Earth would rise again. The leader of this new force, a woman whose family had been torn apart by the Council's destruction, stood on the bridge of a ship unlike any other. It was a ship forged from the last remnants of Earth's technology, upgraded with the knowledge gained from centuries of survival. Her eyes were cold and focused as she watched the stars ahead, knowing the stakes had never been higher. "Commander," one of her officers called out, breaking her concentration. "We're picking up something. It's faint, but it's definitely coming from the Galactic Council's flagship. It's not a distress signal, but it's something else." "A warning, perhaps?" The commander's pulse quickened. They had anticipated a fight, but not this. The Council knew they were coming. That could only mean one thing: the Council was preparing for something bigger than just a retaliation. They had expected humanity to be scattered, weak, and disorganized. But what they hadn't counted on was how quickly the survivors had mobilized. "What kind of signal?" the commander demanded, her voice sharp. "It's encrypted," the officer replied, fingers flying across the control panel. "But it's definitely not a standard communication." We're decoding it now. The commander glanced at the view screen as a shape began to form in the distance, a dark, imposing figure among the stars. It was the flagship of the Galactic Council. Massive, towering over the smaller vessels in its fleet, a symbol of their dominance. The Council had not just destroyed Earth, they had eradicated its culture, its people, its history. But they had failed to wipe away the fire of human defiance. That fire had only grown stronger, more dangerous. As the officer worked to decrypt the signal, a voice came over the ship's intercom. "Commander, the fleet is ready for battle. The entire force is standing by, awaiting your command." The commander took a deep breath. This wasn't just a fight for survival. This was a fight for their dignity, for the very memory of everything that had been lost. The Council thought they could erase humanity, but Earth's people were more than just survivors. They were fighters. They were going to prove it. "Prepare for battle," the commander ordered. "We strike now. We make them regret underestimating us." The ship's weapons systems powered up, the hum of energy thrumming through the hull. The commander's heart beat in time with the rising intensity of her crew's preparation. This was it, the moment when everything they had worked for would either come to fruition or crumble. Earth's legacy, long buried, was about to rise again, and it would be the Council who would face the consequences. As the ships in her fleet powered up, a chill ran through the commander's veins. What if the Council was prepared for them? What if they had expected this? The signal, the warning, it could mean more than they realized. "We're decoding it, Commander," the officer said again, urgency in his voice. "It's coming through now." The screen blinked, and the message appeared in cryptic symbols. The commander squinted at it, her brow furrowing. The symbols didn't match anything they had encountered before. They were ancient, far older than the Galactic Council's technology. A voice, not from the Council, but from a far older source, suddenly echoed across the ship's comm system, sending a shock through the crew. The tone was harsh, almost mechanical, yet unmistakable in its authority. "To the children of Earth," it said, "you have no idea what you are about to face. The Council is merely a shadow of the true force that watches over the galaxy. You are about to awaken something far darker. Be warned, your vengeance may cost you more than you realize." The commander's eyes widened. The warning wasn't just directed at them, it was a threat. A threat that suggested there was something even more dangerous than the Council waiting for them in the dark corners of the galaxy. She knew they had to face the Council, but this new force had made everything more complicated. Was this the reason the Council had destroyed Earth? Was there something out there, lurking in the galaxy, that they had been trying to protect? Something they had feared humanity would one day awaken? The crew fell silent as the message ended. The commander looked around at her officers, their faces a mixture of confusion and determination. They had come so far, endured so much. Could they now face an even greater threat? "We need to prepare for the worst," the commander said, her voice unwavering. "This may be more than just a fight for vengeance. There may be forces beyond our understanding at play here. But we will not back down. Earth will rise again, no matter what lies ahead." The atmosphere on the bridge grew tense, the weight of her words settling in the hearts of her crew. They were ready to strike, but now they had to contend with a much larger mystery. The Galactic Council had been the immediate enemy, but this new force, who were they? Why had they been watching, waiting for humanity to come back? The unknown echoed through the commander's mind, the urgency of their mission now tangled with the growing fear of what they might awaken in the darkness. As her ships began to move toward the Council's flagship, the message lingered. You have no idea what you are about to face. The fleet advanced, but now each step felt heavier, each move more uncertain. The stage was set for humanity's revenge, but the true battle against not only the Council, but the unknown force that had issued the warning was just beginning. The fleet surged forward, the hum of engines vibrating through the hulls as they neared the heart of the Galactic Council's power. Ships moved in synchronized formations, a display of military precision honed over centuries of survival and revenge. The commander stood at the helm, eyes locked on the view screen, where the towering figure of the Council's flagship loomed in the distance. It was a monstrous structure, gleaming and impenetrable, a symbol of the power they had held for so long. Yet, to the commander and her crew, it was nothing more than a target. The unknown warning still hung in the air, unresolved, like an unspoken question that haunted their every decision. The cryptic message had only heightened their resolve to destroy the Council, but it also made them question everything. What had they truly uncovered by sending out that signal? Was there something they had missed? Could there really be a greater force than the one they were about to face? The silence on the bridge was thick, only broken by the occasional beeping of systems and the steady breaths of the crew. They were ready, but the anticipation gnawed at them, urging them to act faster, strike harder. The commander had no illusions about the gravity of their mission. The Council had wiped out Earth once. This time, humanity was prepared to ensure that history would never repeat itself. But the question remained, what would it cost them? A soft alarm suddenly went off, snapping the commander from her thoughts. One of her officers turned, face pale as they checked their readings. "Commander, something's happening. The Council's fleet. It's shifting." She quickly stepped over to the officer's side, scanning the screen for herself. The Council's flagship wasn't the only ship in the fleet. A vast armada of warships surrounded it, each one a threat in its own right. But now, something else was happening. Ships were moving, not just to defend, but to surround them. It was a trap. All ships prepare for evasive maneuvers. The commander barked, her voice steady, though her heart pounded. She had known this would happen. The Council would never go down easily. They'd been anticipating humanity's return, and now they were about to make their move. The entire fleet was thrown into disarray as enemy ships closed in from every direction. The lights of distant stars blinked as the battle began in full force. The sound of blasts and explosions rattled the ship, shaking the crew to their core. The commander's hand gripped the console tightly, steadying herself. This wasn't just a fight for revenge, it was a fight for survival. As Earth's fleet dodged enemy fire, the commander's thoughts returned to that warning. Had the Council prepared this trap, knowing what humanity was capable of? Or was it the unknown force that had warned them, somehow pulling the strings? The more she thought about it, the more the question gnawed at her. "We can't keep dodging forever," the officer beside her said, his voice laced with fear. "We need to make a move, Commander. If we don't strike now, we'll be surrounded." The commander nodded grimly. They had been planning for this moment, training for it, but now the reality of it felt much different. They needed to break through, to take down the Council's flagship. The Council's destruction wasn't just for Earth. It was for all the species they had oppressed, for the freedom that had been stolen from the galaxy. "Target the flagship's weak points," the commander ordered. "This is our one chance." The weapons systems hummed as they locked onto the target. The firepower from Earth's fleet began to surge as the ships let loose everything they had. Missiles and lasers cut through the void, targeting the heart of the flagship's defenses. Explosions lit up the blackness of space, the impact reverberating throughout the fleet. The commander's heart raced as she watched the flagship's shields flicker under the onslaught. They were close. They were so close. But then, just as victory seemed within reach, a new alarm blared across the bridge. This wasn't an enemy strike. It was something else, something that made the entire crew freeze. "Commander," one of the officers cried out, "the Council's flagship it's shifting. It's transforming." The commander's eyes widened as the massive structure began to shift and change before their very eyes. Panels slid away, revealing massive weapon systems that had been hidden deep within the hull. This was no ordinary ship. It was something far more advanced than anything they had anticipated. The transformation was instantaneous, leaving Earth's fleet no time to adjust. "All ships, break formation. Get clear," the commander shouted, knowing that they couldn't hold their position any longer. But it was too late. The flagship unleashed a devastating barrage, its new weapon systems firing in all directions. The beams tore through the fleet like a storm of destruction, cutting down ships in seconds. The commander watched in horror as the fleet's ships were decimated, one after another. Her ship rocked violently as a blast hit too close for comfort, but they held their course, refusing to yield. "We can't take much more of this," the officer at the weapons console called out, voice strained. "We're losing power. Prepare the secondary weapon systems," the commander ordered, her voice unwavering even as the situation grew dire. "We can't afford to back down now. Earth's vengeance will not be stopped." Her crew worked frantically, scrambling to ready the backup systems. Every second that passed felt like an eternity. Their ships, once so proud and powerful, were being reduced to debris before their eyes. But the commander wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. As the flagship loomed larger, its new weapon systems gleaming like death incarnate, she realized that this wasn't just a fight against the Council anymore. The battle had shifted. There was something more at play here, something darker, more ancient, and more dangerous. Whatever lay ahead, whatever had been awakened by their return, was no longer a distant threat. It was closing in, and the galaxy would never be the same. Every heartbeat brought them closer to the final moment, a reckoning that could either destroy them or redefine the very fabric of the universe itself. As the flagship's weapons charged up for another catastrophic strike, something strange happened. The space around the battle seemed to warp, as if the fabric of reality itself was bending under the immense pressure. The commander felt a chill crawl down her spine, her instincts screaming that something was terribly wrong. Before she could order evasive maneuvers, the unthinkable occurred. A pulse of energy, far more intense than anything the Council's flagship had unleashed so far, erupted from the heart of the ship. The blast wasn't aimed at Earth's fleet. It was directed outward, into the depths of space, rippling across the stars with such force that it momentarily cracked the barrier of time and space. The shockwave stretched out, distorting everything in its path, including the battlefield. For a moment, everything went silent. The chaos of battle froze. Earth's fleet, the Council's flagship, and every ship in between hung suspended in the void, as though time itself had stopped. It was in that eerie stillness that the commander first noticed it. A ship, impossibly large, materialized at the edge of the battlefield, emerging from the distortion. Its size was beyond comprehension, dwarfing even the Council's massive flagship. Its shape was angular and sleek, unlike any vessel the commander had ever seen. "Commander, what is that?" The officer beside her gasped, eyes wide with disbelief. That can't be real." The ship, dark as the abyss, hovered motionless in space, its presence suffocating. There was no mistaking it. This was not a ship of the Galactic Council, nor was it of human origin. The commander's mind raced, piecing together fragments of the warnings they had received. The Council's transformation, the strange signal, the cryptic message about something darker lurking in the galaxy, it all pointed to this. The strange ship's sudden appearance wasn't a coincidence, it was deliberate. And as Earth's fleet and the Council's ships lingered, suspended by this unexplained force, the real battle was about to begin. But who were they fighting now? The commander wasn't sure whether she felt fear or rage. The unknown had finally made its move. The eerie silence was shattered when the dark ship emitted a low, resonant hum. A transmission, far more ancient than anything the Council could muster, crackled through the commander's communication systems. The voice was not mechanical, but primal, deep, vibrating with an energy that seemed to reach into the very core of her being. "You have awakened us." The voice reverberated through the ship's hull, settling in the minds of every crew member, as if the words were planted directly into their thoughts. "Who are you?" the commander demanded, trying to steady her nerves. The words were almost instinctive, though she already feared the answer. "We are the keepers of the void," the voice replied, its tone like a cold whisper that gnawed at the edges of her sanity. "You thought you were the last, the survivors. But you are not alone. Not anymore. And you have awakened what you cannot control." The commander's heart skipped a beat. The Keepers of the Void? The name was foreign to her, but something about it stirred memories of old legends, stories passed down in whispers, buried in the depths of Earth's history. Were these the very beings who had once controlled the galaxy, or something even older? The transmission continued, cold and distant. "The Council's destruction of your world was not the end, human. It was the beginning of something far greater. You are the catalyst. You are the trigger." The ship before them, the one that had appeared so suddenly, wasn't just a warship. It was something far more powerful, something designed not for battle, but for something much darker. The commander's worst fears were confirmed. The true enemy was not the Council, it was something far older and far more dangerous, waiting in the darkness of the galaxy, untouched by time or history. The Keepers were here, and they had been waiting. "Commander," one of the officers cried out, his voice rising in panic. "The Council's fleet is powering up. They've recalibrated their weapons. It's like they're cooperating with the Keepers." The commander's mind raced as she realized the full extent of the danger. The Galactic Council, once the ultimate oppressors of the galaxy, had become nothing more than pawns in a far larger game. They were as much victims as humanity had been, bound to an even darker force that sought control over the stars. This was no longer just a war of vengeance. It was a war for the very existence of the galaxy itself. The Keepers had emerged from the shadows, and with them came a threat that dwarfed everything humanity had faced so far. Earth's fleet, though powerful and determined, was ill-prepared for the scope of this new enemy. The Council's vast armada, once the undisputed rulers of the galaxy, were now forced to ally with the humans they had once tried to exterminate, united only in their desperate bid for survival against this far greater power. Her mind whirled. Had Earth's destruction been part of some larger plan? Had their very annihilation been orchestrated for a purpose far beyond revenge? The commander's head ached as the pieces started to fall into place. The voice continued. I was not the destroyer. I was the herald. The keepers are not the end. They are the beginning. The true force that has waited for eons is still hidden. You must turn away from this path before it consumes you all. The dark ship is not your enemy. It is a warning. Suddenly, the truth hit her like a wave crashing against a shore. The destruction of Earth hadn't been the final act of the Keepers or the Council. It had been a key that unlocked something far worse. The Keepers weren't the masters. They were servants, protectors of something even more ancient, something buried beneath the fabric of the galaxy itself. The battle before them, the alliances they had formed, it was all part of a greater design. The galaxy wasn't just being torn apart for power, it was being torn apart for survival. The dark ship surged forward, its weapon ready to fire. The commander's crew watched in horror as the concentrated energy of the Keeper's final weapon began to reach its apex. The dark ship was moments from unleashing destruction on a scale unlike anything humanity had ever witnessed. Commander, please, the voice pleaded, there's still time. You have to stop it. But it was too late. The weapon fired, and a massive wave of energy erupted from the core of the dark ship. The force was overwhelming, dwarfing everything in its path. Earth's fleet, the remnants of the Council's ships, and the once glorious flagship, they were all caught in its wake, pulled toward the immense gravity well created by the dark ship's power. But just as the wave of energy reached its peak, something unexpected happened. The energy didn't just collapse inward, it began to ripple outward, as if pushed by some unseen force. The commander could hardly believe her eyes as the surge of energy started to reverse, its destructive force fading into the void, dissipating as if it had never existed. The dark ship trembled, its systems flickering in and out of existence. A final, desperate pulse of energy shot out, and then silence. The battlefield lay still, the stars shining once again in their infinite expanse. For a moment, the commander could hardly comprehend what had just happened. Had they won? Or had something worse been averted? But the answer wasn't as simple as victory or defeat. The galaxy had changed, and the forces at play were far from over. The final twist came as the strange voice came through the comms once again. You do not understand, it said, its tone grave. The war is not yet over. The galaxy has only begun to wake, and the true enemy has just taken its first breath. With those words, the transmission went silent. The darkness receded, but only for a time. The commander turned to face her crew, the weight of the moment settling in. The battle was over for now, but the real war had only just begun. The galaxy had been saved, but at what cost? And what was waiting in the shadows, beyond the edge of the stars, ready to strike when they least expected it? The commander didn't have the answers. But one thing was certain, the fight for humanity's survival was far from over. The silence that followed, the chaos of the dark ship's collapse, was almost unbearable. The commander stood still, her eyes fixed on the void where the battle had raged just moments ago. The remnants of Earth's fleet floated in space, battered but alive. The star systems that had once been so vibrant, so filled with hope, now lay in ruin, scarred by the war that had torn them apart. Yet, as the commander took in the aftermath, she felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't victory, not in the way they had once imagined. But it was something else. The galaxy was still here, still alive, and humanity still had a chance to rebuild. But the warning in the voice of the mysterious figure, the one who had revealed the true nature of the Keepers, echoed in her mind. The war is not yet over. The galaxy has only begun to wake. The commander felt the weight of those words pressing down on her chest. It was clear now that the Keepers were not the true enemy. They had been pawns, servants of something far older, far more powerful. The question that lingered was what that something was and why it had chosen now to make its presence known. She turned to her officers, her crew, all of them still processing the shock of what had just transpired. "Prepare a full analysis of the dark ship's core," she ordered. "I want to understand what just happened, and I need to know everything about this force the voice spoke of." One of her senior officers, a young woman with bright eyes and a sharp mind, nodded. "We'll get to work on it immediately, Commander. But I think we need to prepare for more. This doesn't feel over." The commander could only nod in agreement. For all the destruction the Keepers had caused, they had also given humanity the chance to rise again. But that was not enough. The destruction of Earth, the destruction of their people, it was a wound that would never fully heal. The galaxy had forgotten the resilience of humanity, the strength they had shown throughout the centuries of survival. But now they would remember. Earth had shown its power. But more than that, it had shown the galaxy something they had forgotten: the power of vengeance, the power of unity, and the power of survival. "We will rebuild," the commander declared to her crew, her voice steady despite the weight of the unknown future. "But we will also be ready. Whatever comes next, we will fight. We will protect this galaxy, and we will never forget what was taken from us." The days that followed were filled with intense analysis. Earth's remaining fleet, along with what was left of the Galactic Council, worked together to understand the true nature of the Keeper's dark ship. They found remnants of an ancient technology, something far beyond even the Council's understanding. There were artifacts buried within the ship's core, relics of a civilization that had once dominated the galaxy eons ago. These artifacts, though seemingly inert, radiated a strange energy that none of them could fully explain. The mystery only deepened as they began to analyze the data. But more pressing than these discoveries was the realization that the galaxy was not as they had believed. The Keepers had been only the beginning, the first wave of something much larger, much more dangerous. The commander began to pull together a coalition, a united front of all the surviving factions in the galaxy, knowing that their next battle would not be one they could fight alone. As the commander stood in the command center, staring at the stars on the massive view screen before her, she knew that the path ahead would not be easy. Earth had survived the initial onslaught, but their fight was far from over. They had uncovered just a small portion of the truth, and the rest was still waiting to be discovered. She turned to face her officers, the people who had fought alongside her through this war. The faces she saw were determined but wary. They understood the stakes now. "We've fought to survive," she said, her voice resolute. "But now we fight for something greater. We fight for the future, for our children, for the legacy of Earth." There was a moment of silence, a shared understanding passing between them. This was not just a fight for survival. It was a fight for redemption, for reclaiming what had been lost. Humanity's vengeance had been enacted, but there was still more to be done. Earth's return was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning of a much larger chapter. As the commander looked out into the endless expanse of space, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the galaxy's history pressing down on her. They had been forgotten. They had been crushed, but now they would rise. Earth was back, and the universe would never forget what it had done to them. But something lingered in the back of her mind. The voice from the comms. The warning. The true enemy has just taken its first breath. What did that mean? And who or what was waiting to challenge them next? Weeks turned into months as the commander worked with the remaining factions to prepare for what was coming. They shared information, pooled resources, and began to fortify their defenses. Earth's technology had advanced, but it still needed time to catch up to the remnants of the Galactic Council and the newly emerging forces. Still, humanity's resolve was unshakable. Then, one day, a transmission arrived silent at first, just a faint signal among the many others they received. But as it grew clearer, the commander could hear the voice once again. This time, it wasn't a warning. It was a command. You are not ready. But the time is coming. The message was cryptic, but its meaning was clear. The forces that had once laid waste to Earth were far from defeated. They were regrouping, reorganizing, and now they were ready to strike. The commander clenched her fists, her jaw set. The battle for survival was not over. It was only just beginning. As she stood there, watching the transmission fade, one thought echoed in her mind. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for. The galaxy had tried to forget them, but Earth was back. And now, humanity was ready to make its stand. The fight for the future of the galaxy, for Earth's rightful place in the stars, was just beginning. And this time, they would not back down.